Welcome to HOWSTUFFINMYCARWORKS channel. Today's video is about how to replace a distributor on this 4th generation Firebird Trans-Am equipped with an LT1 engine. And because in order to replace a distributor in this kind of car, you gotta remove the water pump. I'm gonna go ahead and install a brand new water pump also. And while I'm at it, I'm gonna go ahead and install the new seals. That way nothing will leak. That way I only do this job one time. And if you're a subscriber to our channel, you probably saw the video where Victoria installed a brand new thermostat. So because of that, I'm not going to be installing a new thermostat on this video because it has a new one. So if you're experiencing problems with your Opti-Spark distributor on your LT1, stay tuned and you're going to learn how to replace it. These are the items up close that are going to be replaced. Distributor, water pump gaskets, the seals that go in the front of the timing cover, and obviously we're going to add brand new coolant. Because of the tight space and the location of the distributor on the LT1 engine, it's better if you raise the car up and place some jack stands underneath the frame for safety. Make sure the emergency brake is applied, cars in park, blocks on the rear tires obviously, keep it from rolling. So once the car's up, the next step is going to be to remove the air intake system, followed by the draining of the coolant, because obviously we're going to be installing a brand new water pump, or even if you're not installing a new water pump, you do need to remove it to get to the distributor. So just start by removing the air intake system first. This car has an aftermarket air intake system, so it's not necessary to remove the whole thing. So just this section, and I'm just going to loosen this clamp over here, disconnect the air intake temperature sensor and this vacuum hose, and this section is going to come right off. In your case, if you have the stock air intake system, you might have to remove the whole thing, or at least the top section. And for safety, make sure you disconnect the negative battery cable. Once the battery cable has been disconnected, loosen the radiator cap. You don't have to remove it, just loosen it up. Then grab a 3/4 inch wrench, place the coolant can underneath. If you have one of these, it's going to make your life a lot easier. So just loosen the drain plug. Once you loosen it up a little bit, just finish doing it by hand. Just drain the coolant. And if you want it to drain even faster, just remove the radiator cap completely. Once you've drained your coolant, disconnect the 3 hoses that go to the top of the water pump. This one right here, this one right here, and this one. Once you have disconnected the upper radiator hoses and the heater hose, disconnect the cooler hose and disconnect the other heater hose and the temperature sensor. Once all those 3 items are disconnected, remove this lower bolt and this lower bolt right here. Make sure that you move the pan in the center of the car when you remove the lower bolts, especially this one, because as you can tell, it goes all the way through, so the coolant leaks out. That way you don't make a mess. Next step is to remove this bolt right here, this other one down here, and it's going to be the same way on this side. They're located in the same, about the same distance, so 2 more. There's a total of 6, 3 on each side. So start with the lower ones. Once you're done removing all the bolts, remove the water pump. Looks like the distributor harness connector is on the way, so let's disconnect that. Make it easier to slide the pump out. There. Here's it. Require moving all the stuff out of the way to be able to slide it out. Once the water pump has been removed, remove the spline shaft so you don't lose it. Next, make sure that your vehicle has the belt routing diagram. If not, here it is. You're going to need it to install the belt back on, because the next step is to remove the serpentine belt. Using a 13mm socket and ratchet, release the tension from the serpentine belt by moving it clockwise like that. So when you do that, it moves the tensioner away from the belt, and remove the belt. So once the serpentine belt has been removed, remove these 3 bolts that hold the harmonic balancer in place using a 5/8 socket, and remove the harmonic balancer. So once the harmonic balancer has been removed, you have access to the distributor, and the next step is going to be to disconnect the spark plug wires. Now if you look at this setup, what makes the Opti-Spark distributor unique is that the way the cap has been designed, all the spark plug wires that go to the passenger side come out of the passenger side of the distributor cap, and same thing for the left side. Now the problem with that is that in order to achieve this, what you see right here, inside the cap is where the routing takes place. And eventually, when the caps fail, instead of the current going through the spark plug wire to the correct cylinder, it'll jump across to other cylinders, causing the vehicle to misfire, especially under a load. And that's exactly what was happening with this car. I started to feel under a light load, and I knew that the cause was the distributor cap. Now what I did also, just to make sure, I tested every single spark plug wire, and even though they tested okay, I figured, you know, I'm gonna go ahead and put a new spark plug wire. So I did. I installed a brand new set of MSD spark plug wires just to make sure that they might have had like a small break through the wire and the current was not traveling all the time. So I put a brand new set, and I still had the same problem. So like I said, it is the cap in the Opti-Sparks that causes that. So because of the labor, I decided to buy a brand new distributor instead. To disconnect the spark plug wires, you can do a couple things. You can mark them from top to bottom, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, which, you know, that could work. Or you can mark each cylinder, which is the better way to do it, and I'm going to show you on the new cap how they're marked on the cap so you couldn't go wrong. Alright, so here we are with the new parts. So let's take a look at this distributor. So if you look at here, get some light, here are the numbers. There's 2, there's 8, there's 6, there's 4. And then there's, in here you got 1, 7, 3, and 5. So they're clearly marked. That's what you can do, either or. The main thing, of course, is to make sure that every single spark plug wire goes where it belongs, otherwise the car is going to misfire and it's going to run worse than it ever did. So go ahead and mark them whichever way you want, so we can move on to removing the Opti-Spark distributor from the engine. Okay, so here's the lower one. The other one is up here. And the other one is over here. So remove those 3 and carefully remove the distributor. I just went ahead and bought a brand new distributor, especially since just the cap and rotor alone is about $160 just by itself. The MSD distributor is slightly over $500 depending on where you buy it. So is the AC Delco. So these items are not cheap, and obviously whenever possible it's better to install either the OEM AC Delco or the MSD, just because, as you can tell, it's too much work to be taking these things in and out. So that's up to you. Whichever brand you decide to do, that's your call. But you know, this engine's spinning at pretty high RPMs. You know, you don't want it to malfunction. So I had the distributor out. Okay, here's the top of it, and you see this oil right here? This oil is not good, especially if it got inside the distributor, which that could have been part of the cause of the slight misfire that I was having under the load. Plus the darn oil was getting everywhere. Now if we look in front of the timing cover, we can see that the oil was coming out of the seal right there where the water pump goes. This one looks like it's okay. This one looks dry, and there's a little bit of oil on the front crank seal. So I'm gonna go ahead and replace it also. This is the perfect opportunity to do it, and I bought all the seals for the same purpose. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and remove the cap to see whether it was the oil that caused the problem or not. Holy smokes. I'm going to show you up close what this thing looks like. When you see it, you're going to be like, you're going to be amazed that this car ran. And what's amazing is that it ran really awesome on high RPMs. And only, like I said, under light loads is when I noticed the problem. So, but when you see this cap and rotor, you're going to be like, wow. So, let me show you. Okay, so here's the cap. Look at this thing. It's all melted right there. And over here, look at the rotor. I mean, that is crazy. You know? And like I said, usually it's inside the circuits themselves in here where the spark jumps across when the Opti-Spark starts malfunctioning. But in this case, it was way more severe than that. I mean, this is crazy. You know, and then like I said, I could have just bought the cap and the rotor and I would have probably been okay, but because the housing was broken, I just decided to just go ahead and put a new one. So because of the length of this video, I'm going to have to break it in two sections. So this will be the end of part one, which what took place in this video was I showed you how to remove the water pump, the harmonic balancer, and the distributor. And I took the cap off to see what was going on inside, and it was melted. So on part number two, I'm going to show how to replace the seals and how to install the components back on. And I'll take for a spin, which it should run awesome, really. If it ran that good before, it should really break those tires loose now, after all the cylinders are working at their peak all the time. So it's going to be even more fun to drive this thing. In the meantime, Thanks for watching part 1, and I may be seeing you in part 2.